Longines. Nailed it. Longines is a watchmaker I still haven't fully embraced. For some reason, I still feel resistant to Longines watches. I don't really know where that comes from. Maybe seeing them in duty-free shops at airports, Toblerones, Tanqueray, and Longines. But there's a strong heritage with this watchmaker. There are interesting designs and people who I trust like the watches. And the prices, they seem reasonable for a luxury good. Yeah, prices seem reasonable for a thing that you don't need. And a lot of you have asked me to look at these two watches, and that's really why these are here. Some of you would not shut up about these watches. You annoyed me into making this video. I don't usually like to cave to the demands of terrorists, but you got your way this time. So I asked Exquisite Timepieces if I could borrow these watches, and as usual, Exquisite was just awesome about it. I don't take money from them or any store or any watchmaker. I just ask that they pay for shipping both ways. And so in this video's description, you'll find links to these watches on the Exquisite Timepieces website in case, your lustful thoughts get the better of you. Two newer GMT watches from the same brand that function the same way, but with some interesting and honestly bizarre differences between the two. This is the Spirit Zulu Time in 39mm. That's opposed to the 42mm version which came out before this. I did a video about that watch too, the 42mm GMT, and I liked it. Go watch that video too. Or don't. I don't care. You'd think we'd all have something better to do, but it turns out no, we don't. And this is the HydroConquest GMT. The HydroConquest dive watches have been around for a while, but with this new GMT movement, this seems like a combination that a lot of people have been waiting for. I'm going to get into what I think about each of these watches because I do think almost every day. Don't believe the people who say I don't. But let's hit some facts about each of these first. I already mentioned that this is the 39mm Spirit Zulu Time. It's a steel case that's 46.5mm long, 13.2mm thick, and uses 20mm straps. It has a water resistance of 100 meters and weighs about 147 grams on the full bracelet. This reference on a bracelet lists for $3,150. On a leather strap, it's $100 less, so $3,050. The HydroConquest GMT is also in steel, but slightly larger. It's 41mm across, 48.5mm long, and 13mm thick. It has 21mm lugs and a water resistance of 300 meters. On a rubber strap with the deployant clasp, this costs $2,775, and on a bracelet it costs the same amount, which is weird but cool. Or you could get this on a nylon strap for $2,675. You're seeing these watches on my
7-inch wrist.
Obviously, on such a perfectly sized and divinely proportioned wrist, either watch will work great. Let me start with the Spirit Zulu Time. Here is the 39mm compared to the 42mm that I looked at a year ago, and honestly, I can't decide which size I like better. The good news is that probably means that either size will work for a lot of people. The bad news is that I did not help you make your decision. But I suspect you already know what you like. There are a lot of people watching this video, even people with the same size wrists as me, who just find anything over 40mm distasteful. Then there are people who find anything smaller than 42mm an affront to masculinity and their fragile egos. And okay, fine, there are reasonable people who just have passive preferences. But reasonable people aren't fun to talk about, and this is the internet, damn it. One thing that makes the 39mm Zulu Time wear a little smaller is that the bracelet tapers from 20mm to 16mm at the clasp. That gives this watch a slightly vintage feel, which almost always means a bit smaller. I had originally thought that the 13.2mm thickness might feel too much, but not at all. Totally fine, great even. This is nearly 2mm thinner than a Tudor Black Bay Pro, which is also a 39mm GMT watch, and to be clear, I didn't have much of an issue with the Black Bay Pro thickness, but the Zulu Time dimensions are better. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Then there's the 41mm HydroConquest GMT, and man, I do not like this name, HydroConquest. I didn't like it when I was just saying it, and I like it a lot less now that I'm typing it in titles and captions and emails, but that's not important. For some reason, this dive watch is slightly thinner than the Spirit Zulu Time, even though the HydroConquest has 200 more meters of water resistance. Now the big question for you with wearability is probably going to be the length of the watch, not the thickness or the width. 48.5mm is a pretty normal length for a 41mm watch, and this is on a rubber strap, and man, this is a a good rubber strap for the price. Actually, one of the more comfortable rubber straps that I've tried on at any price. The rubber is just the right amount of flexible for me. And the deployant clasp has a cool trick. It has an adjustment system. The length can be adjusted to 6 different positions. It ratchets tighter and then it loosens with a little button. This looks exactly like the one used by Formex watches, which makes me think that both of these clasps are produced by Dexel, which is a Swiss company that makes a bunch of cool watch components. I had originally wanted the bracelet for each of these two watches to compare, but I can still do that because I have tried on the HydroConquest GMT bracelet in stores. Now there are two weird differences between these bracelets. The Zulu Time has quick release spring bars on the end links, and the HydroConquest does not. The HydroConquest has a push button adjustment system in the clasp, and the Zulu Time does not. Why? Why though? Why? Why not have a single damn bracelet that can be easily removed from the watch case and has a push button adjustment system? But the Zulu Time does have a manual adjustment system built into the clasp, 5 different positions that you'll need something like a paperclip to change. It's nice, it's just not as nice as the HydroConquest. Why, Longines? Why don't you want us to be happy? Now there's another difference between these two watches, which is both subtle and confusing, and that's also the name of the second volume of my self-published autobiography. Subtle and Confusing, You're Terrific, and the Sisyphusian Battle of Internet Comments. The movements in these watches are almost the same. They're both the L844 movement. They're based on the ETA A31.411. Both Longines and ETA are part of the Swatch group. So does that mean that these are in-house movements? The answer is that it doesn't matter. Stop it already. These are cool movements, about 72 hours of power reserve, which is a nice feature. And these are flyer or traveler style GMT movements. I'll get back to that in a second. Now the subtle and confusing differences here is that the Zulu Time has the L844.4 movement that's certified as a chronometer by COSC and has a date at 6 o'clock. The HydroConquest uses the L844.5, not .4, that is not certified as a chronometer and has a date at 3 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. Why is the 844.5 not a chronometer and why is the date at 3 o'clock? Again, I have to assume that Longines does not want us to be happy, but honestly, I suspect it's two things, price and heritage. It's more expensive to certify the accuracy of a movement. And then all the previous HydroConquest watches have dates at 3 o'clock, and I suspect Longines wanted to continue that pattern. That's just my guess. So a flyer or traveler GMT movement is where a local hour hand jumps and sets the date, and the minutes hand and the GMT hand are linked. This is an ideal GMT style for people traveling between time zones a lot, which is why it's often called a traveler. Now, a bunch of people have asked me about that wiggle. Assuming they're asking me about the GMT hand and not my legendary dance moves, yes, it wiggled. Actually, yes to all. Adjusting the local hour hand on both watches moves the GMT hand a little and then it comes back to its original position. I don't know why this matters to people. It does not affect the accuracy of the GMT hand, but I guess people associate this wiggle with lower quality movements, in which case I'd suggest that you come clubbing with me and you'll see a wiggle that can be of the highest quality. But seriously, I don't think this matters. Now the design of these two watches, I'm mostly on board with how these look. In general, the Spirit Zulu Time is slightly more vintage inspired and a little more luxurious looking, especially this one with the gold dial furniture and applied markers. And then there are the two big polished chamfers running along the cases of the steel Spirit watches. I like how this watch looks, except for the stars. I wish those stars weren't there on the dial. And that's one thing Hodinkee got right with the Zulu Time limited edition, no stars. They also did it all in titanium, which is another good move. The HydroConquest is more utilitarian looking, this black one especially, although the dial does have a very subtle sunburst finish. It's a nice look, it's there when you want to see it. And the GMT chapter ring is bi-color, which is another nice detail that probably only the wearer will ever see. But, I just don't like this hour hand. It's just so awkward to me. And I know, this coming from a guy who owns a Pelagos chronograph. I know. But part of my quibble is also the finishing of these hands. They're almost totally flat, which makes them look a little cheap to me. The round markers at 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock have grown on me. I actually like them. And I like that this is a GMT watch with a timing bezel. I'm much more likely to want to time something than I am to want to track a third time zone like the Zulu Time bezel will allow. Though the Zulu Time bezel is really nice, snappy, 24 clicks, and both bezels have ceramic inserts. You know, for around $3,000, if you must throw your money away on a mechanical watch, which as your attorney I advise against, but if you must do it, these are really cool watches. The subtle and confusing differences aren't great. I have issues with the designs and I still don't know how to pronounce the brand name, but I think Longines did a pretty good job with these watches.